Hello, everyone. This is the Illusion here with
Slasher McSplitter.
Slasher McSplitter. That's right.
What's going on?
Everything's good, Slasher. What are we going to be talking about today on this episode more specifically?
We're gonna be talking about video games.
Video games. Anything in particular you want
Yeah. How about going into some favorites, some all-time favorite
to
stuff.
favorites? All right. So let's start it off with home systems. What was your first home system that you ever got? I'm talking like early childhood.
My first home
Yeah.
system ever,
Ever.
Atari 2600.
Atari 2600.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Probably I was playing it probably at 4 years old.
4 years old.
Yeah, maybe 3 or 4 years old was probably the first time I played it.
I've never owned an Atari.
No.
Never ever owned an Atari. The closest I came was an Atari Lynx. But
Uh,
my first system, yeah, I know you're sitting there like I feel
no,
sorry
no,
for
no.
you.
I actually liked the Lynx.
I My first system was the NES,
Oh, okay. That was probably that was my second system.
the Nintendo Entertainment System, and what a system that was,
Oh.
wouldn't you say?
Oh, definitely, definitely.
It was one of those. You weren't a kid unless you had an NES system.
And if you if you had friends that had a Nintendo, you'd try to go over their house as much as possible.
Of course,
Play Nintendo.
I wouldn't have it any. I wouldn't have it any other
Yeah.
way. Now, did you get the regular NES system, or did you get the Mario Duck Hunt,
Yeah, I
Light
got-
Zapper 2 controller combo?
Yeah. And I got the system so late that it was when it had the orange gun instead of the gray gun.
Yeah, that's how I got it. I got it late too. I had the orange gun, but man, that was $149.99. I specifically remember that, and now
Oh, your parents paid that much for it?
Yeah.
Mine only paid 100 for it.
100.
Then again, I got it. What it came out 1985, right?
You probably got it like a
I
little
got
later
it
than that.
89.
89,
I got
something like
89,
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So for all those years, I was playing Atari. I was still playing the 2600 when Nintendo was a popular thing.
Right.
But I was playing a lot at friends' houses. A lot of my friends, they had the NES. Some of them had the Master System. Some of them had Commodore 64. But that's where I would play. Play the stuff that has better graphics than anything on Atari.
Now, what was your favorite? What was your favorite NES game? Any specific favorites that you can remember?
I have a lot. Well, the first one I owned that wasn't Mario and Duck Hunt was Life Force. It was part two of Gradius.
I remember that game.
It had the Contra code. It had the up, down, down, left, right, BA, start, 30 lives. Let's see. See, I also didn't own too many games. I rented a lot of games, so a lot of my other favorites were rentals. Tecmo World Wrestling. Tecmo World Wrestling is definitely up there for my favorites.
Yeah, that was definitely a fun game.
Batman. Batman was a real fun game. What about you? What were some of your favorites?
So my favorite games. Oh well,
Mario 3?
Just about any of the Mario games, right? Mario. Yeah, I was more of a Mario 2 fan.
Oh, really?
I loved 3. But Mario 2 had this. Mario 2 was a game I never owned until like late, and that was a game I could never find anywhere. I'm guessing it was a limited release or something, because I never really found. I remember my dad and I would go hunting for that thing, and we went through like the ghettoest of the ghetto
Yeah.
looking for that game. Like these little stores where like you wouldn't expect to find it, like these little holes in the wall, and I never found it. And then I bought it off a friend, if I recall, for like $25-$30. That was one of my favorite games. Of course, I love the Contra series.
Oh yeah, Contra's up there on my list of
I
favorites.
love DuckTales. DuckTales was fantastic.
Another one.
And a funny story about DuckTales, my dad and I would play pinball, and that was interesting because my dad, I know your dad didn't play video games with you a whole lot, or actually, I don't think he ever played, right?
I told you that the only thing I remember him ever playing was Robot Tank
Robot.
for Atari.
Well, my dad had that one game he played, the original pinball for NES, and it was like a thing. Every night we would get together. My mom would play, my dad would play, and we would take turns. It was a 2-player game. So anyway, long story short, one night he goes to me, let's play pinball, and I could have sworn I remembered I was playing something else the night before, right after we got done playing, and he's like, "Oh, it's already in the system. Turn it on." So go turn it on, and I was like, "This ain't pinball." And I see the DuckTales logo flash up, and I was like, "Oh wow, I got DuckTales!"
Yeah.
It was one of the big surprises that I got, and I enjoyed that game. Not because of the story behind it. I just loved that game. It was I don't think anyone ever disliked DuckTales. It was one of those games, wasn't it?
All the Capcom games, all those Capcom games are fun.
Even Street Fighter 2010?
Bionic Commando. The Street Fighter 2010 is, I mean, yeah, I guess if you get the hang of it, it's fun, but it's a rough game to start. I'll tell you that much. It's rough to start it.
I actually beat that game. I mean, that was that was one of those games that you don't expect to beat as like a 12, 13-year-old kid.
But Strider was also that was a game that you kind of needed you needed a nice issue of Nintendo Power to help you through that game.
You absolutely did. And before we move on to arcades, because I was gonna speak about how a lot of these games were in the arcades. I mean, wasn't Strider an arcade game?
Yeah, Strider was an arcade,
but obviously didn't translate well to the Nintendo system. But
they made it totally different because Strider on the arcade and Strider on the Genesis were the same, but they changed it up for Nintendo. It was good. It just wasn't. I didn't think it was as good.
I don't think anything was good. Look at Ninja Turtles 2. It was like the arcade game port, and everyone loved the arcade game.
Oh yeah. I liked the first Ninja Turtles on NES though.
I did too.
I mean, it had its moments where it would piss you off, but yeah, it was a fun game.
So now that we're talking about arcade, and I know you was also talking about how I want to talk about how difficult these games were. What was the difficulty issues with a lot of the games, and you mentioned Nintendo Power, so I want to touch up on how we used cheat codes back in the days. Not specifically cheat codes, but we had something called the Game Genie. So we'll definitely go and talk about that. But let's go into the arcade ports. What was some of your favorite arcade games? Whether it was made for the home console or not at a later point, or what have you, that doesn't really matter. But like arcade game, favorite arcade game.
I mentioned last episode. I mentioned that Narc, of course, was one of my favorites.
Yep, the Quarter Cruncher.
Yeah, Double Dragon. I mentioned that.
Another Quarter Cruncher.
My favorite wrestling game, of course, WWF WrestleFest.
WrestleFest.
Love that game.
You just love spending quarters, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, all the money I went as a kid would go to arcade games and comic books. Let's see. Smash TV.
Smash TV was fun.
Smash TV was real fun. Even the later stuff like NBA Jam. NBA Jam was another one that'll eat up your quarters.
But you know what? I liked any game you could play with friends. I liked where even the X-Men game, even the Ninja Turtle game,
The Simpsons,
anything by Konami, even The Simpsons, exactly.
Sunset Riders.
Everyone could just plop in a quarter and play and help you out.
Captain Commando,
and exactly. And
Final Fight. Final Fight was another one. Final Fight was another one I played all the time.
That was a great game. I was never so much into the competitive stuff. Like, we talked about this last episode when you were playing Street Fighter, and then someone came in and right before you beat Bison, someone just decided to take you out.
Derail your game. Yeah, I always prefer co-op as opposed to versus.
I did too. I guess it lent itself to that whole whole party atmosphere that they try to create at home with these new consoles, but it'll never be the same. So now let's talk about it. And you mentioned this before when we were outside the other day. An interesting point to bring up. A lot of these arcade cabinets had a lot of burn marks. How did that come about?
This was back also when you can pretty much smoke anywhere, right? So there was this one particular store in my neighborhood that had the games in the back of the store, and it was a lot of like older kids, probably like 16, 17, 18 years old, and they'd be in there playing the games with us, like like 10 to 12 year olds. So the older kids, especially Street Fighter, the very first Street Fighter, there's like a bunch of like 17, 18-year-old kids who would be playing the game, and they'd light up a cigarette in the store while playing the game. But you need both hands to pull off the moves in Street Fighter. So what they would do was rest their lit cigarette in between the first and the 1 and 2 player buttons. They rest the lit cigarette in between there. So the head of the cigarette would be cooking away at the plastic on the cabinet.
I remember that.
There's burn marks all over the cabinet. It's like they customized their own arcade cabinet.
And then weeks later, you would find the same machine. Like I specifically remember playing Street Fighter at the bowling alley, and then I would see that same cabinet at like the pizzeria like a month later.
What was it? A tag? Someone tagged up on it or something?
Not so much tagged up. It like you recognize the burn mark because like you said to yourself, there's no way there's going to be a burn mark above the heavy kick and above the low and the medium punch on
the one that I would always spot is between the 1 and 2 player button.
Yeah. Now it's interesting you mentioned that people smoked back then, and it's smoking such a taboo in this day and age to even talk about them. I guess, let alone you don't see commercials for it on the TV either. But I used to play against kids who wouldn't put down their smoke. So
they'd be with the cigarette in their mouth like James Dean playing a video game.
Exactly, and then they would squint with one of their eyes, like and I was like, holy moly, this is my this is my way to beat this guy. And then of course I'd get cheesed. They put me in the corner, and fireball, uppercut, and I was done.
Could you remember the first arcade game you ever played?
First arcade game I ever played, honest to God, no. But it probably has to be, it might be WrestleFest.
Oh, that might be the first.
That was at the laundromat. The only reason I played it was because when I first came to this country in '89, we used to have to go to the laundromat. We didn't have a wash machine, or it might have even been '90 that I played my first arcade. But yes, that was the first arcade game I played, WrestleFest. So coincidentally, one of your favorite games happens to be the first one I played.
I can't even. I was trying to think about it, and I can't even remember what the first arcade game. Maybe it was Donkey Kong. Maybe it was Pac-Man or Miss Pac-Man. But there was so many. Even as a little kid, like there was this. Did you ever hear of this game, Mr. Do?
I did.
They used to have it on Atari. Well, they had it on the arcade too. I'd play stuff like that. Elevator Action.
Elevator Action was fun.
Yeah. But what would you say your favorites are?
Favorite games? Oh boy.
Your favorite arcades?
I grew up on anything Capcom. So if there was a Final Fight, there was a Street Fighter, I was there. I was playing it.
Beat 'em ups. You like beat 'em ups?
Beat 'em ups. I love the beat 'em ups, and this could be anything. Even
Renegade. Renegade was a beat 'em.
What was the game? Cadillacs versus Dinosaurs.
Oh, Cadillacs versus Dinosaurs. Yeah.
That was fun. The Punisher game. The Next Final Fight, was that an arcade game?
Next Final Fight.
No, I think that was only on the Super NES, right?
See, after the first Final Fight, I don't really know what was left after the first one.
And then I played the Turtles, the Simpsons.
All right, well, the Turtles, the Simpsons, and X-Men. When you break it down, they're all pretty much the same exact game.
Yeah, it was just like a copy and paste. They basically said, "Oh, we like what Capcom's doing. Let's go ahead and do exactly."
We're gonna swap out Magneto for Mr. Burns. Here.
Exactly. But one specific favorite, I don't think I have one specific favorite. I always loved Sunset Riders.
Oh, Sunset Riders was fun. Yeah.
Was one of my favorite games, and also, like I said, the Street Fighters. That was.
Did you ever play Too Crude?
I did not.
It's a beat 'em up, but you could like you could use the billboard in the background as a weapon.
No, I've never.
Uh,
I've never played.
well, the R-type games were always good. Those were good.
But that would suck your quarters
Yeah.
like insane. You need like $8 to beat those games.
Yeah. You need you need 2 pockets full of quarters.
And a lot of these games were hard, and that brings up our next subject is how difficult these games were. How difficult a lot of these games were. So let's go back to talking about home consoles. Now, this could be anything. It doesn't have to be specifically Nintendo. It doesn't have to be specifically, any one console. But obviously, the younger you are, the harder the game is. So for me, it would have to be, a lot of these hard games have to be on Nintendo, because here I am a 12, 13-year-old kid, playing a game that was designed not for 12, 13-year-old kids. Specifically, remember Bionic Commando as being a hard game.
That's a game that I used to always hit a dead end, because I didn't own the game, but I would rent it a lot.
And you make it up to the albatross and then fail?
It was always a dead end because I didn't know the pattern. I didn't know the map pattern. Because, remember there was a map pattern to
had
follow.
a lot to do with it.
Yeah. I would always hit a dead end.
I felt the same way about Ninja Turtles, Ultra's Ninja Turtle.
That's why when you would get a Nintendo game that had a password system, when you would get a Nintendo game like that, it was like, oh, okay, I'm going to beat this thing. Because I could, Nintendo, they expect you to turn on the system and beat the game all in one shot. Now, like who the hell does that these days? Nobody.
Well, also you don't have games that last for like 200-300 hours.
Exactly.
Days, so you don't have those vast open world games that you did back then.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, playing the first Turtles game, wasn't that like wouldn't that take like an hour and some odd minutes to get to the end?
What I remember about the first Turtles game was the levels themselves were a pain in the ass to get through.
Yeah, they definitely were.
And the bosses were nothing. You would bust your ass to get to the boss, and the boss would be a pushover. the getting through those levels with the annoying fire guys.
Yep, I remember that.
And then you would get to Bebop or Rocksteady and kill them in like 10 seconds.
Well, Rocksteady was easy to kill. You just stand in a corner with Donatello and just aim down constantly.
Yeah.
And it would hit and it would miss, and you would do that for about a minute and a half, and he was done.
But the one that used to get me all the time was the bomb level.
The bomb level. Yep. I remember that. So, these games were hard, and, right up there is also the first Mega Man. That was tough.
The first one.
The
Mega
first
Man
was
the
tough.
hardest one.
Not like the second one was super easy. I mean, once you figure out the pattern, they're all kind of, but even if the first one was tough.
Well, they do this thing to you at the end of the first one, when you're supposed to go on the boss run at the end of the game, right before you fight Dr. Wily.
Right.
They don't let you regain your weapons. Every boss you kill, you don't get the power up to regain your weapon. So you gotta have a specific plan and a specific amount of weapons to use on everyone to have enough left to fight Dr. Wily.
What was Capcom thinking, right?
Well, I don't understand why you make the first one the hardest.
Especially when you're marketing a game to kids. I mean, it's...
Yeah. Mega Man doesn't look like he looks like a nice guy.
All right, every game nowadays, we can argue that every single game, I shouldn't say every single game, but almost every game nowadays is kind of like they hold your hand, like it's there's like an easy mode, there's
always an indicator on screen telling you what button to press.
No, I mean, not, no.
No, you got to see some of these wrestling games, some of the new wrestling games. Some of the new wrestling games is you throw a punch, then it'll stop and tell you what to do. Then you throw another punch.
Oh, that's
stop,
just a tutorial. That's basically walking you through how to trying to drill into your head how you do the move. The games are really good in that aspect now. Is that they train you how to play them. But back then you didn't have that. Back then it was you learned by trial and error. You learned by
an instruction manual for the home
and
systems.
the instruction manual.
Well, back when instruction manuals used to be a big part of learning how to play the game.
And I remember back then cheat codes were mainly for like like invincibility or like level selects
level
or
skips. Yeah,
level
there's a lot of
skips
level
or X
skips.
amount of lives. Like in Contra, you had the 30 life code, and you said Life Force as well, right?
Life Force had it.
A lot of games had it.
Jackal didn't have that, but I think Jackal had. Oh wait, did Jackal have a code?
It might have.
I know you could steal your partner's lives. If you're dead, you're playing two players, and your partner has more lives than you. You die, you lose your life. I know you could steal. It's just like Contra, where you could steal lives from the other player.
Now, and if you didn't have a code, what they had something called the Game Genie. Do you remember that,
I
right?
never ever messed with the Game Genie. I never did. I never got it. You had one?
I used one. I've never owned one either, but from my understanding, it really evened. I shouldn't say evened. I mean, it leveled the gaming field. Kind of. It was, it leveled the playing field in the sense that you can do a whole bunch of stuff.
But there was some games that had useless codes, right? Some games had codes that basically don't do anything.
They absolutely did nothing exactly. And then I believe the Game Genie was even ported over to later systems. Although
I know they had it. I know they had one for Genesis.
It wasn't as wildly successful as it was for the NES, but that's how we got around as kids. If it didn't have I guess the main cheat code was Nintendo Power. You looked in Nintendo Power, it would give you a map. Like
they had the whole game mapped out across like 2 pages.
Yeah, you had like a big open page spread on the original Legend of Zelda, and that was basically how you knew where everything was. You didn't really that was our version of the Game Genie before they made the Game Genie.
Also, Game Pro used to have the cheat codes.
Game Pro used to have the cheat codes. Yeah,
they would even have it for arcade games. Like that's how I found out about some arcade game cheats.
Yeah, mostly cheat codes now, rather than being a god mode. Since most games are so easy now anyway, it's mostly cosmetic. Like, it'll give you, and that whole thing started kind of with NBA Jam. Remember, NBA Jam had codes for, like, big heads?
Oh, they also had the hidden players, too.
Oh, the hidden players.
When you put in the code in the beginning, it gives you the guy who created the game.
Yeah.
Mark Turmel.
Mark Turmel, yeah. So it was kind of like, it's more a cosmetic thing now rather than to like truly help you beat the game, because the games these days are kind of a joke.
What's this thing that everyone was complaining about? The new game where everyone was complaining about that there's no difficulty setting.
There's no difficulty setting?
Yeah, I forgot what the game's called.
I have no idea, but
I saw on Twitter a lot of people were making fun of the people who were saying that there's no difficulty setting. I forget what it's called.
I have no idea. We'll have to look that up for next episode. But moving on to the next topic now that we covered cheating.
Well, also, where would you consider using turbo buttons cheating? I'd say it's cheating.
Turbo buttons, sure, especially not so much cheating, but yes and no. Because the game wasn't designed to be that way. But when you're playing a shooter and you're pressing that B button 890 times in the course of like a half an hour, you're pretty much going to need a new controller every few months.
It's cheating, but for a good cause.
Cheating for a good cause in the sense that you don't have to replace your controller every 6 months.
And you can use your thumb for the rest of the day.
And you could use your thumb for the rest of the day to do whatever activities you want to do with it. Exactly. So it's cheating for a good cause. We'll just go with that. We'll leave it at cheating for a good cause.
All right. Yeah, it's you put an asterisk next to it.
Asterisk next to it. I beat such and such shooter. Asterisk.
Well, I used controllers like the Max and the Advantage. There are some games. Jaws for the NES. If I didn't have a turbo button, I wouldn't have been able to beat that.
I love turbo button on Contra because every gun became an S.
Yeah.
Do you remember the S gun that was the only one that would fire in turbo mode? But then you have but then it was useless.
Well, there was also one other rapid fire gun. It didn't have the spread. It wasn't the spread weapon, but it was a rapid fire gun. Yeah.
But it was awesome. Yeah, that was the M gun.
But I would say it's cheating. I would say.
All right. So moving on to the last topic. In this day and age, when you beat a game, first of all, when you digitally buy a game, it's yours to keep. It's bound to your account. You can't really resell it. The games don't have resale value unless you, of course, get a physical copy. But even then, you get ripped off. And speaking of being ripped off, what did you do when you wanted to get rid of a game? How would you sell it? I mean, you couldn't throw it on eBay. You couldn't.
I've very few times successfully sold games. Very few times. I've traded games for other games to my friends. But the few times I've tried to sell games, it didn't exactly, I had a Genesis and probably about 8 games. I had the controllers, I had the cables to hook up and everything.
Right.
And I took the pictures, I put it up on eBay. Nobody wanted it. So I guess I was stuck with it.
How I would go about selling my games in IFL. This is actually a pretty horrible story, and this is
Funko Land?
Funko Land. Oh my God! So I bought this. My grandma.
Everybody has Funko Land.
My grandmother, God rest her soul. I felt so terrible doing this, and to this day I regret it because this whole story reminds me of my grandma. She bought me World Series baseball on Sega Genesis.
Oh.
Yeah. And I bought it at Blockbuster. Blockbuster had a markup. Whatever was $49 at any store or $59, they would charge an extra $10 on top of that. So we ended up paying like close to $70 for that damn game. And stupid me,
what, $70
for that damn game, right?
For a Genesis game?
Yeah, she took her hard-earned money. That game, first of all, was already $59.99 for whatever reason. So I'm sorry, it was $49.99. They start. I'm thinking of Street Fighter. Street Fighter I paid $70 plus for. It was
for a Genesis game.
For a Genesis game, I paid. Yeah, it was $10 above market value. So it was. I paid something like $65 for World Series baseball, and stupid me wanted to get Mortal Kombat 2. Mind you, it was used. It wasn't even a new copy. I traded the game in, and I got something like I still had to pay like $20-something bucks for Mortal Kombat. I'm sorry, $30-something bucks. I was pissed. But I, being a kid, I wanted Mortal Kombat. I didn't want to pay full price for it. I traded in my perfectly brand spanking new copy of World Series Baseball.
Jeez.
And I don't think my grandma cared, but to this day I can't forgive myself for that. I feel really bad because that's like a memento I could have that she bought that for me with her hard-earned money. So yeah, that was Funko Land. You take a game and they tell you, oh, we'll give you $5 store credit for it. Meanwhile, the game was like brand spanking new. It was like out. It was like the hottest game that month. Okay, we'll give you $5 for it.
I don't have any Funko Lands. Everyone has a Funko Land story but me. I think I've only set foot in a Funko Land like 2 times in my life, and I never bought or sold anything.
Well, you know what, Funko, GameStop has become kind of like Funko Land. I mean, they still give you, they're a little better. They might give you like $18 to $20 for like a new game or something.
Well, they're also pretty much the only game in town.
The only game, exactly, the only used game in town. But now with everything going digital, this is kind of going to be pointless.
On the outs, you think it's going
to be on the outs? You think
it's a matter of time before GameStop goes the way of
a Blockbuster?
Yeah. You think it's a matter of time before then the next Tower Records?
Not so much, but if they, maybe not so much, but if they start doing, if the companies start limiting physical copies and they're only going to be able to sell digital copies, I mean, they're not going to be making a whole lot. I mean, what are they going to be making? $2-3 on a sale, if even that?
There are people out there who always are going to want a physical copy of something, no matter what it is.
I certainly prefer it. For 2 reasons. It has resale value. I could resell it at half. I don't like a game. I could resell it to someone. I could make their day because I take good care of my stuff. You know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll give them my copy for half the price. I enjoyed the game for however many hours, but I get to pass it on to someone, or I could lend it to a friend, and it has resale value. I could let someone borrow. The downside to it is it constantly has to occupy space in the console. I have to put it in there. When I want to play a new game, I got to take it out. So in that sense, it's bad, but it's also good. Whereas with a digital copy, I can't lend you my digital copy. Or I can if you log into my account, but that's, I really have to trust you.
Yeah, well, that's also not like, me lending you a NES game. You're like, oh, give it back to me by Friday.
Exactly. It's nothing like that. Yeah, so it had its ups and downs, that was...
The one time I successfully sold the game was on eBay. That was it. It was a Marvel vs. Capcom 2 for PS2.
You got a lot of money for that, didn't you?
And $90 for it.
Yeah, that was a popular game. I still have my original, the one for the game, the one for the Sony PlayStation, the original PlayStation. But that's perhaps a story for another time. How much money you can make with all these games.
Another awesome game, by the way, Marvel vs. Capcom 2.
Yep.
Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Sorry, I'm slurring my words.
Very, 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 very fun games. Capcom just made good games all around, didn't they?
Mm-hmm. For arcades and for home systems.
Yeah. Wow. Deep memories.
Oh, actually, I did sell a couple of NES games about a month ago in my local comic book store.
Awesome.
Well, I sold probably about three Nintendo games, and what was the Advantage? I sold the Advantage because I still had that. But yeah, that's about all I sold. I never got to reap the benefits of my video game collection financially.
Well, I think we reached the end of the program, didn't we, Slush?
Yeah. Yep.
I think we talked about all the points we want to talk about. We talked about home system, arcade, difficulty level, cheat codes, and buying and selling games. And we didn't really touch so much on buying, but I mean, where else do you buy games but besides the store? I mean, we didn't have Amazon back then where we could just order products, right? Or we just walked into the store and bought them.
Or a site where you could rip the games from, just play them on your computer.
Well, we won't be condoning any illegal activities here.
I didn't say to do it.
No, I know. You didn't say to do it.
I mean, I just said it could be done.
There's nothing like owning a copy of the game. You get to look at it, hold it, let your friends borrow it.
But one thing though, if say you want to play a game called Little Samson for the NES.
Little Samson? No.
You're not going to want to shell out the ridiculous amount of money for an original copy.
Oh no, I'm not gonna want to play Little Samson for the NES. I think that's.
No, it's a good game. I'm just saying, shelling out the money for a copy of it. It's not. You're better off finding it on some site.
Yep. All right, so that's gonna wrap up. It's gonna wrap up today's episode. We had a lot of fun talking about this, and you know what? There's a possibility we might revisit this topic from time to time again, right?
Possibility.
We got a lot more consoles to talk about, a lot more stuff. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions, post them on the comments below, and we'll cover stuff in the next episode. This has been The Illusion.
/ McSplitter.
Signing off.
Have a good one, everybody.
Have a good one, folks.
Peace.
Indeed.